Okay, we are ready to get started. It's officially after 12, so good afternoon and welcome to all of you. I'm Julie Gilpin, and I have the honor of serving as the president of Impact 100 Greater Milwaukee, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here. It's great to see so many faces, and especially so many blue name tags, which signify some of our new members, so welcome to everyone. Beyond the Headlines is an Impact 100 Greater Milwaukee's educational series that focuses on key issues facing our communities. Our Beyond the Headlines luncheon topics aim to go beyond the surface level awareness on topics that are affecting and shaping our community. Beyond the Headlines is an opportunity to explore deeper stories affecting lives in the greater Milwaukee community, the community we serve. It is our goal that information shared today will help inform the work we do in pursuit of our mission. It is our goal to educate our members and to transform our understanding of the problems facing those served by the nonprofits we support, our neighbors, our coworkers, our families, and our friends. Before we hear from our powerful speaker today, I have two important topics to cover. First, I would like to extend our gratitude to our very generous sponsors who are listed on the screen next to me. They help make the work of Impact 100 possible with their very generous gifts. Their financial support demonstrates a shared commitment to creating positive change in our community. The contributions of our sponsors go beyond financial assistance. They signify a dedication to the values of Impact 100 and a belief in the transformational work that we are doing as a collective giving organization of women. Please join me in giving a round of applause to our sponsors for their invaluable partnership. Secondly, I want to encourage members to engage in the work of Impact 100. Members, your membership truly is one of no requirements, as you may have been told. Well, other than paying your dues, of course. However, like everything in life, you get out of something what you put into it. And we encourage you to get a lot out of your Impact 100 membership. We proudly boast a high retention rate, roughly 82%. And we know that members who are engaged in our work are more likely to renew their memberships. I want you to stay with us and renew year after year. And I would love to see that 80-some% retention rate get higher and higher. Many of you have heard me talk about all the hats we wear in our busy lives, and I want you to keep thinking about those hats and think about what hat you might wear in Impact 100 next year, our 10th year. There are lots of ways to get involved, big and small. Attend events like this, volunteer to be a greeter, consider serving on a grants committee, help with marketing or branding, and the list goes on and on. Our nominating committee is busy as we speak, filling spots for board leadership, committee chairs, and other volunteer roles. I encourage you to let us know what you might be interested in. What hat will you wear in Impact 100 next year? As a reminder, we are an all-volunteer organization. We are 411 volunteer members strong. Yay! But the truth is, there's a lot of volunteer work to accomplish, and we'd love for you to wear an Impact 100 volunteer hat and engage in the work of Impact 100. Now, on to the reason we are all here today. As we listen to our speaker, you will hear a story that transcends the headlines, shedding light on the real mental and behavioral health challenges faced by adolescents and the organizations who serve them. Impact 100 Greater Milwaukee is more than a grant-making organization. It's a force for positive change, amplifying the voices of those who are working tirelessly to address these critical issues. It is my pleasure to introduce someone who has played a pivotal role in shaping today's event. Our program chair, Sarah Manning. She has been an inspiring force behind the scenes, working hard to curate a program for today that not only informs, but ignites a passion for positive change. Please join me in welcoming Sarah to the stage. Sarah?
Thank you, Julie. Good afternoon. I have had such an amazing experience with programming this event, and I feel very honored to be able to introduce to you not only Dr. Jenny Walczak, but Children's Wisconsin being here today. Whether you're a parent, grandparent, friend, mentor, it's most likely that we've all been affected in one way or another by what the headlines are declaring a mental health crisis in our children and adolescents. I want to thank Children's and Dr. Jenny Walczak for taking time out of their busy schedules today. Dr. Walczak is a licensed psychologist, clinical director of mental and behavioral health at Children's Wisconsin. She received her bachelor's from Marquette University and her doctorate from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. In her role at Children's Wisconsin, Dr. Walczak is responsible for the management and leadership in clinical program development, clinical supervision, case consultation. She provides recruitment and retention oversight, clinical outcomes training and development, and implementation of best practices. Additionally, she oversees the Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation Program and the Telehealth Clinic. She leads the initiative to implement universal mental health screening for all patients in Children's Wisconsin. At your tables, you'll see note cards and pens. Please use these to write down any questions you might have throughout the program as Dr. Walczak is giving her talk. They'll be collected towards the end, and we'll have a Q&A session once she wraps up. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Walczak to the stage.
And I am realizing as I get up here that I do not have a clicker for my slides. It's an absolute pleasure to be invited to speak with you all today. I have an action-packed presentation that covers a lot of content. I do want to give a trigger warning before we get started. What I've learned over time is that this content can affect people different ways. I think as Sarah just said, we all have our own story around mental health. So do what you need to for your mental health during this presentation. If it's step away, if you want to catch me at the end, I am happy to talk through or answer any additional questions that maybe you don't feel comfortable voicing before the group. We are also going to watch a story about a young man who has received treatment at Children's Wisconsin. I will forewarn you, it is a really touching story, and so I'm excited to share that with you. And again, just want everyone to be prepared that you should do what you need for yourself during this presentation. There we go. Okay. So at Children's Wisconsin, our vision is to really care for the whole child. When we think of health, I think we often, and we think of Children's Wisconsin, I think we often think about medical care, right? But at Children's Wisconsin, we're really trying to think about all aspects of health. So not just that medical or physical health, but mental, behavioral, social health, that whole child approach. So with that, we know there is no health without mental health. So not everyone necessarily knows this, most mental health concerns start in childhood. And so I think the moving piece here, though, is that on average, it takes more than 10 years for children to receive treatment. And that, I'm going to talk a little bit about different reasons that we have a mental health crisis and why we hear so much about mental health. But some of this is that, we know in early childhood, these are really important and formative years. And so we know that the brain is developing. We know that kids are vulnerable because of all that early brain development, and that early childhood is going to have a lasting impact on academic, social, emotional, and behavioral achievements into adulthood. So important that we are identifying concerns early on for our kiddos. We know, though, that kids are maybe not being identified or they're not receiving that treatment for an extended period of time because There's not a lot of services necessarily out there for children, or there's not evidence-based practices that support children. There's stigma around seeking mental health services. So there's a variety of reasons that kiddos just are not really getting the treatment that they need, which just piles on to the problem that we have. So we know that untreated mental and behavioral health illnesses are a huge problem in our country, in Wisconsin. A couple of statistics here. We know that 1 in 5 children in Wisconsin are living with a serious mental health concern. And we know that suicide is the second leading cause of death among kids in the nation. I'm going to spend some time doing a deeper dive on suicide a few slides later. We also know that Wisconsin kids are hospitalized with mental health conditions at 4 times the national rate. So, I think what you're going to hear in my presentation today is Children's Wisconsin, our community partners, are doing a lot to help this, and we still have a really long way to go. So I think this is the question I often get asked to speak about. So, okay, we've heard there's a crisis. We heard, we have all these kids who need help. Well, why do we have a mental health crisis? So this is multifactorial. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these different areas. So one of the things that's pointed to is that kids today are under academic pressure that's really just reached intense levels. So the stress of getting into the right college, making good grades, kids are building portfolios now to, in high school in order to help them get into college, landing the best internships. This all puts stress on kids, and it just takes an enormous toll on mental health. I think sometimes as I see light bulbs going off of oh yes, this is my life, or this is going on for my kiddo or my neighbor's kiddo. So we know that the academic environment has shifted over time. Social media, we could be here all day, and I could do a whole other presentation on social media. The Surgeon General last May released a report, and a quote from that is, "Nearly every teenager in America uses social media. The scary thing is we don't have enough evidence to conclude that it's sufficiently safe for them." So, looking broadly, the research tends to be mixed. There are pros to social media, and the research tends to be tell us that there's a more negative impact of social media on the developing brain, on teenagers, young children who have access to enormous amounts of information that they don't know what to do with. And so we know that social media is obviously having a significant impact on our mental health. I find it very interesting, the year the iPhone was released, there's some data that shows the year the iPhone was released, the rates of depression increased shortly after that iPhone release. So again, there's something there. This other point, too, really relates to social media, these unrealistic body image standards. So kids don't know always how to discriminate what they see on social media. So we know people show their best parts on social media, and they show, paint the picture that everything is perfect. For the brain that cannot filter that information, this can also be stressful and lead to those unrealistic body image standards, as well as just kind of the highlighting all the things they potentially don't have, which causes stress. ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, are what we may think about as trauma. So these are potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood before age 18. About 64% of U.S. adults reported that they had experienced at least one type of ACE before age 18. ACEs are things like witnessing violence, abuse, neglect, witnessing violence in the home or community, having a family member attempt or die by suicide, poverty, divorce. The list, I could have a whole other presentation on this. The list goes on and on. ACEs, we know, can have lasting negative effects on health, well-being, life opportunities like education and job potential, as well as physical health. We know that kiddos that have experienced more ACEs have more mental and physical challenges as they move into adulthood. As I mentioned earlier, access is a huge issue in our state as well as across the country. We do not have enough access for kiddos to receive mental health concerns. We have a workforce shortage of psychiatrists, therapists, psychologists who we just don't have the workforce to meet this growing need. COVID-19, it just won't go away. I stuck it on there. I like to call COVID-19 the accelerator. So we had a mental health crisis before COVID-19. Rates of anxiety and depression were already on the rise, and COVID-19 just accelerated that. I'm going to touch on some really common childhood mental health concerns, just kind of FYI to learn a little bit more. Anxiety is one of those common mental health concerns in children. People with anxiety disorders experience intense, excessive, persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. They often have repeated episodes of this and have sudden feelings of intense anxiety, fear, terror, which we would call a panic attack. Anxiety is a normal part of life. So if we're not experiencing any anxiety, that would be atypical. It's normal for a kiddo to experience some anxiety before they take a big test or give a presentation. It's typical for a young child to not want to separate from their mother. And then at some point, right, that baby learns to separate, so it has this developmental course. Where we become concerned is when a kiddo can't control that anxiety and it becomes something that impacts their functioning. Some risk factors that contribute to anxiety, genetics. So if someone in the family, or if there's a family history of anxiety, that child may be more likely to have anxiety themselves. Experiencing a trauma, we're hearing about those ACEs again, and substance use disorders can all be risk factors for anxiety. Just to show some names of some common types of anxiety disorders in children. Anxiety is definitely treatable with therapy. Some kiddos end up needing medication in addition to therapy to help control their symptoms. Depression, also, one of those things that is normal to have periods of feeling down, crabby, sad, but we become concerned when those feelings don't go away and persist and and start to impact that kiddo's functioning. Research indicates that depression onset is occurring earlier and earlier in life. And again, if you think back to that slide of why do we have kids in crisis, we think about that academic environment, we think about ACEs, we think about all the social media, all those things that are different now than maybe have been in past years that just weren't around. Risk factors that contribute to depression, very similar to anxiety. So family history of depression, that child may be more likely to have that themselves. Trauma, chronic stress. Some common types of depression that we see in kiddos is the classic kind of major depressive disorder. Kiddos with depression may present with more crabbiness, irritability than maybe the commercials we see on TV of the adults that's kind of lethargic and having a hard time getting out of bed. Disruptive mood dysregulation disorder is a disorder where kiddos really just have these intense reactions that are out of proportion to the situation. And so they really become very agitated and irritated over something that, kind of no one else is experiencing it in that way. Similar to anxiety, depression is definitely treatable with therapy, but some kiddos do benefit from the addition of medication. So suicide, let's talk a little bit just about kind of the, what suicide is, who are our kiddos that are potentially experiencing this. So the majority of kiddos who attempt suicide typically have a mental health concern. There's a lot of myths out there about suicide, so things like they're just doing it for attention. Or one we hear a lot at Children's Wisconsin is we're on our suicide screening initiative, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is if we talk about suicide, my child's going to become suicidal. These are all myths. Younger children, which we do know younger children, meaning under 10, can experience suicidal thoughts. And there have been children, it is rare, who have completed suicide at that young age. For younger children, suicide tends to be impulsive, meaning something happens and they may react pretty quickly by doing something to themselves, versus maybe an adult or an adolescent where something happens and they're going to maybe think about it, they're going to plan, they're going to plot. With younger children, because they lack impulse control, these attempts tend to be more impulsive in nature. Kiddos may be feeling sad, confused, angry, and we see kiddos who do experience suicidality may also have comorbid ADHD, attention, hyperactivity, as well as a host of other concerns. Teenagers, suicide attempts may be associated with stress, self-doubt, pressure to succeed, financial uncertainty, disappointment, loss. Again, think back to that slide of why are our kiddos in crisis? And these are the kiddos that are just feeling like there's no hope and they just don't know what to do with themselves anymore. And a lot of times, things would be better if I wasn't here. Like it says here too, it's seen as a solution to their problems. As noted earlier, this is the second leading cause of death. We know that around 20% of adolescents will experience at least one episode of depression in their lifetime. Again, I think highlighting how critical it is that we are doing as much early detection and prevention as possible with our itty-bitties and then with our adolescents too, that we're asking them about suicide, we're asking them about depression so that we can help. Really, I see our mission as like helping change the trajectory if that trajectory needs to be changed. Some of the risk factors associated with suicide, we know that kiddos that are depressed, this is one of the things that we're going to be constantly assessing for and reassessing for. If we have a family history of suicide attempts, that's something that is important to know about a kiddo who may be depressed or experiencing suicidality. Some of that trauma, we're always asking about a child who has access to firearms or other weapons, because they may have access to that. Children that are bullied have chronic feelings of hopelessness or helplessness and that loss and rejection. Some of the warning signs, I like to give pieces of information that you can take home and be like, oh, okay, this is helpful, like I learned something tangible. We're looking for changes in eating or sleeping, frequent or pervasive sadness. Again, common for children, adults, everyone experiences times of sadness or feeling down. This is where it is not going away. Withdrawal from friends, family, regular activities. My kiddo was going to track, my kiddo was hanging out with her friends, and she no longer wants to do those things. Complaints about physical symptoms. So lots of tummy aches, headaches. The kiddo just always seems something is always bothering them physically. Social work taking a decline, and then sometimes kiddo, we will just see a preoccupation with death and talking about it a lot, and like, wow, you never really talked about that before, now we're talking about it a whole lot. So we're gonna share Carson's story, and then I have a couple more remarks after that. So I'm gonna have our AV folks take it away.
This is where we call home. It is classic suburbia. It's kids running and playing and families, and it's the good life, so to speak. We're not gonna stop wanting to be here just because of a bad thing that happened.
Carson was very intense as a kid. He wanted everything he did to be the best.
He's always been that kid that you could, tell him to do something, he would accomplish it.
In retrospect, we see he was hitting a few bumps in the road. There was just these series of things that he was processing them as huge disappointments and really big, big hurdles that he didn't know how to handle. We didn't know how much that was bothering him at the time. It was March 4th that night, 2017. I woke up at 3:04 in the morning, and I had a sense that something was off. And so I got out of bed and I started walking down the hall, and I heard something in the garage, and I found him.
I was sound asleep, so the first thing I heard was her screaming. And I probably jumped out of bed faster than I've ever jumped out of bed in my life.
He shot himself at about 3:03. It seems like forever when you're laying there with him and waiting, but help came and things then moved very, very quickly.
The first thing I felt when I woke up was I was scared. I didn't know where I was. I was in a lot of pain, obviously. My parents were obviously the first two people I saw when I woke up after my suicide attempt. And the very first thing that I wrote down was, "I'm sorry." I had felt this pressure that I had to live up to expectations that really weren't set on me. I had to get straight A's, had to be the best in sports and that kind of thing. I kind of thought that if I didn't do that, that I was a failure and I had disappointed them. And that was kind of what drove me to the thoughts that the only way out of this was to try and take my own life. The way I describe it is falling down like a black hole, it's dark, scary, and it's fast. It just happens, and you're not really expecting it. At this point, I was conscious enough to realize the gravity of the decision that I had made and the consequences from it.
And I said, there is nothing to be sorry for. You are forgiven for anything and everything. It's okay. This is an illness. This is not your fault.
It's like you had blinders on and all of a sudden your peripheral vision just got way better. All of a sudden, because you see maybe just how many people struggle with this on a daily basis.
The statistics are startling. It's something that everybody's seeing across the country. But in Wisconsin in particular, we have some statistics that are really scary for our children. We have a very high suicide rate in teenagers. 1 in 4 of our kids in high school are telling us that they've had thoughts of depression and anxiety. Every statistic that you look at tells you that our children are suffering.
Children's Wisconsin has a vision that we will have the healthiest kids in the nation here in Wisconsin. We made a $150 million commitment to improving the mental and behavioral health for all of our kids in Wisconsin.
We're working on early detection, early intervention, prevention of mental health issues. We're working on access and trying to decrease the stigma around getting mental health care.
Stigma around mental illness is real and it's long-standing. One of the ways we can best reduce stigma is by sharing our own stories.
Carson, he wanted people to know what happened to him, and one of the things he said was, I want that girl that cuts to know she's not alone.
One of my biggest goals of sharing my experience and sharing my story is I want to prevent anyone from going through the same things that my family and I went through. I know personally what it feels like to be in that very dark place right before you attempt suicide, but it doesn't last forever.
My biggest piece of advice to parents is start that conversation. Don't be afraid to talk to your kids about mental health.
We need people to feel okay with saying, I'm not okay. And it's amazing when you open up that conversation piece and make them comfortable, how many people are able to come and talk about it and then get the help that they need.
I'm still seeing the same therapist that I saw at Children's Hospital only a few days after I got there. When you think of the word mental health or mental illness, it's kind of like a negative connotation. It doesn't have to be that way. What I look most forward to in my future is kind of just the curiosity of seeing what's next. But now you get to see me graduate high school, go to college, graduate college, get married. Maybe I'll give you guys a couple grandkids. Those are all things that you guys get to see now that we weren't sure if you guys would ever get to see. And those are things I get to experience. That's all normal things, and I'm excited to get on with that part of my life.
So I get chills. I've seen that video, I don't even know how many times now, and I get chills every time I watch it. I think you heard a lot of things I already talked about. Carson was under that really self-imposed pressure, right? And his parents, maybe saw some things, but hadn't really had the conversation with him. And so Carson has been a wonderful advocate, spokesperson around mental health, around suicide. And I think one of the things his parents talked about is kind of having the conversation, right? So let's talk a little bit more about the conversation. So how do we, I think there's a couple things, these may not be news to you. How do we support a child's overall health? I would argue these are probably good for any of us, not just a child. So making sure, I'd like to say, we need healthy parents and caregivers in order to have healthy kiddos. So I tell parents, you got to check yourself, right? So when families come in for therapy, they bring their 8-year-old in. I'm not just taking that 8-year-old and working with that kiddo. This is really about me working with you, your family system, in order to help give you the tools that you need to work with your kiddo. And, we're going to work with the 8-year-old too. But it's really making sure that parents are aware of their own mental health, if they need help themselves, and then acting on that so that they can be the best parent possible. We want to build trust with our kiddos so that when things come up, when they feel unsafe, when they have a problem, they feel like they can come to us. Consistency, great for young kiddos, great for any kiddo, making sure that we're keeping a routine. Kids like predictability. They like to know what's going to happen. It makes them feel safe. It makes them feel stable. So making sure that we're keeping that consistency in their daily routine. Sleep, eating, exercise, not going to spend a lot of time there. We know that sleep is critical to mental health, keeping a healthy diet, exercising, moving our bodies. Spending time together. And, I think people often think, this is a family unit or all of us have to spend time together. I don't have time for that. Research has really shown that kiddos having one stable, trusting adult relationship in their life is enough. That's it. Just one. So it's spending time together with that important adult or adults in their lives. And then proactive screening. So since Carson's video, since Carson's story, Children's Wisconsin has made a tremendous commitment to universal suicide screening. So that means that when kiddos 10 and older come to Children's Wisconsin, to our specialty clinics, so to derm, to eye, to urology, as well as to our primary care clinics, our inpatient units, ED, we are going to screen them for suicide because we feel it's really important to ask the question, to know than not. And so that in our largest kind of rollout around universal screening started in our specialty clinics this past July. I was sharing with someone, we have completed probably higher now, about 28,000 suicide screens just in that setting alone. And so really making a difference and really living our value of identifying kiddos and getting them the help that they need. I was sharing too earlier at the table, some of these kiddos, this was not news to the parents. Oh, yep, they did have that challenge with thinking about suicide and were hooked in with a counselor and, okay, great, like we're happy you're getting what you need. But then some of these kiddos are what we call our surprise kiddos. They walked into that urology appointment and that kiddo filled out that questionnaire and said, I am suicidal right now. And parent is stunned. And grateful and so thankful that we screened so that that kiddo would not have walked out the door without anyone knowing that information, because we can then give the parent the help, the tools they need to navigate that. So let's talk, right? What are we gonna do? And I think you heard Carson's mom say, like, we gotta have this conversation. So checking in even when nothing seems wrong, right? We want to get a pulse on our kiddo. Where are they kind of at baseline? What's their typical? So that we can detect maybe when something seems off. We're going to use age-appropriate language. The way we talk about mental health is going to be different with a 4 or 5-year-old than a 15-year-old. So with my little 5-year-old at home, we talk about feelings. With a 15-year-old, we're going to talk about potentially mental health because that's language that they are probably hearing in their life. We're going to validate how kids feel. We're not going to say, oh, don't feel like that. Don't feel that way. We're going to validate and acknowledge how they feel so that they feel heard. And then we're going to problem solve with them. We're going to try to figure out with them so that they feel like they have some power and control in this situation of what they can do next with those feelings or with that problem. And we're going to make this conversation a part of our regular routine. It could be a whole sit-down deal. We're going to sit down and have our conversation as a family. It could be we're going to sit down and do kind of highs and lows of the day. At the dinner table, we're going to talk about how you're feeling. Like, however this works for your family, for your kiddos, you're going to make this conversation a part of your routine. One of the other big questions I get asked all the time, well, like, when should I be concerned about my kid? I don't know. I'm not a mental health professional, or I just don't know. I gave you a lot of information today. Mental and behavioral health concerns are going to look different in every kiddo, and the circumstances are different with every kiddo. The advice I tell parents, you know your kiddo best. You know if something seems off. And you're really, again, looking for those persistent changes, not just, oh, we had a bad day, or, oh, my 5-year-old had one tantrum. We're really looking for persistent changes, and then those changes in functioning. They are not doing the things that they used to. They're not showering anymore. They're not going out with their friends. They're not texting anymore. These are really atypical things for my kiddo. Younger kiddos, we may see things like regression. My kiddo was potty trained, they've been potty trained, and now all of a sudden they're wetting the bed again, and they're wetting all the time. Something really seems off. And then older kids, obviously, like we've talked about, some of those more classic withdrawal symptoms and just not doing the things that they used to do. So ask for help. If you're not sure, I encourage everyone to ask for help. The best place to start is your pediatrician. At Children's Wisconsin, we have integrated behavioral health in all of our primary care offices, which means that we have a mental health professional who is available to work elbow to elbow with your pediatrician to help when you are concerned, or to just be there as a friendly face to say, hey, I'm here if something comes up, or to provide some psychoeducation. They're just a friendly face and immediate access to a mental health provider. So always, I recommend going to that pediatrician first, chatting with your pediatrician about what your concerns are. Safety concerns, we have a variety of other things that we do. If you have concerns about your child potentially being suicidal or they're self-harming, those are more immediate concerns where we want you to think about going to our walk-in clinic or potentially to the emergency room if you're that concerned. So what are we doing? As you heard Amy Herbst, my boss, in the video say, Children's has a $150 million commitment to mental and behavioral health. So this is not just on our strategic plan and something that kind of collects dust. Like, this is a real commitment with dollars behind it. Our core areas, our core objectives, and I think these will all probably resonate with you now, around early detection, prevention, and education, increased and equitable access. So remember, we have an access problem across this country or in this state of being able to give kiddos access to services. And so making sure that we are increasing access for kiddos, and then trying to eliminate stigma. So you heard that mentioned in the Carson video too, around I think people are, can be hesitant to seek services because of the stigma associated with mental health. I think that conversation is changing, and we still have a long way to go. So some of the things you'll see here, some of the things we're doing at Children's Wisconsin, as I mentioned, our universal screening, early childhood mental health. Can't stress how important that is, especially as we talk about those stats with little kiddos. We have school-based mental health, so that is mental health providers embedded within the school system. Our integrated mental and behavioral health, that's mental health providers integrated within the primary care services. Training our workforce, we have a number of different learners at Children's Wisconsin with the hope of trying to build that workforce. So we're taking responsibility for training, and if they stay with us, great, or if they go out in the community, great. The more the merrier. We just want people seeing kiddos. Urgent and mental health, I'm going to talk a little bit about our walk-in clinic in a moment, as well as some of our partnerships in the community. So just to give you, I thought this was a nice visual, just to give you a sense. So this is really just our outpatient therapy services at Children's Wisconsin. So just the difference from 2022 to 2023, these are the number of visits with a therapist that kiddos saw. So we saw an increase of close to 24% from 2022 to 2023, which I think speaks to two things. One is, like, the need is there, and we continue to meet the need, right? So it's not going anywhere. These kids aren't going anywhere, and we continue to rise to the occasion, along with many of our community partners, of trying to help kiddos. So I just want to highlight some of our more unique kind of offerings at Children's Wisconsin. Our Craig Yabuki Mental Health Walk-In Clinic, which is housed on the Milwaukee main campus. And we actually, just about 2 weeks ago, opened our second walk-in clinic in Kenosha at our clinic housed there. And so these walk-in clinics offer really what I'd liken to urgent care services. I need help now. I need to see someone now. Where do I go? And this is where you're going to go. So kiddos there are seen for a variety of different concerns. They're seen because they need a therapy session between their therapy sessions. Parents have a question about, I'm not really sure what's going on with my kiddo. Kiddos we have seen with suicidality, homicidality. So really, it's a immediate access touch point for families. Autism program is also something that over the past, historically Children's did not do much in the autism space. And so we have firmly, planted or flying our flag and saying, yes, we are seeing kiddos with autism and have been building a program around that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of those other ones on here as I talk about our community partnerships. So the Mental Health Care Partnership was established in 2007, and this is a public-private consortium dedicated to improving health care for low-income, underserved populations in Milwaukee County. And the aim is really improving health outcomes, advancing health equity, and lowering the total costs of care. Children's is active with this partnership, and in the mental and behavioral health realm, we work with the Milwaukee County Crisis Redesign in order to really prioritize the Mental Health Emergency Center, which you'll also see up there. So the partnership consists of 5 health systems, of which Children's a part of, along with the county. And with the Mental Health Emergency Center, we came together to say, we have like a really antiquated crisis design delivery system, and we need to do better at meeting the mental health needs of the community. So really, like, our former system was really focused on like institutionalized care and centralized models of care. And the shift has really been to look at upstream, downstream models of care, community-based, decentralized care, and making sure that we still have access to psychiatric emergency care. The health systems in the county contributed to this, and the Milwaukee Health Emergency Center was was developed. It's a 24/7 psychiatric emergency center serving adults and youth. And really all these partners came together and continue to convene monthly in order to make sure that they're prioritizing this crisis delivery system. So really nice, I think development of services there. Children's also partners with Rogers Behavioral Health on our integrated healing program, as well as many other areas around bringing access to kids. Our integrated healing program is a collaborative model that focuses on mental and behavioral health, physical therapy, medical services. So it's really this wraparound for kids with complex functional disorders related primarily to pain, with the hope of getting these kids back to functioning. Outcomes have been amazing, and we hope that this continues to grow in this partnership. One of our other partners is the Sojourner Family Peace Center, which some may be familiar with. They offer a variety of services to families in the community. Children's has a clinic there with psychiatry, with therapy. We partner with the Child Advocacy Center for kiddos that have experienced recent trauma, and continue to work with our partners there to, I think, really, again, give that comprehensive services to those families that come. Almost done. So what's your call to action? At home, we're going to talk about mental health with your family. If you are not having the conversation, go home and have the conversation. Resources, they're everywhere. There's some on the Children's Wisconsin website. Feel free to go there, our Shine Through website. At work, encourage these conversations around wellness, around mental health. I've gone to other organizations, like, where I've come to their wellness day, or I've come to talk during Mental Health Awareness Month to really try to change that culture in the workplace. And in the community, join and support what's happening throughout Wisconsin. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Walczak. We do have quite a few Q&As. We have quite a few questions. So
hopefully I have A's for you.
Okay, first question. The shortage of mental health practitioners in Wisconsin, what does the future hold for that? Are there signs of improvement? Are there students in the pipeline? Will it get better statewide?
I think that's our hope. I mean, we, for psychologists, for example, Children's Wisconsin partnered with the medical college, and we started our own psychology residency this past year, again, to bring more of those learners in, with the hope that those psychology learners will then stay with us as fellows, and then we will, potentially be able to add them to the workforce eventually. I think that schools are doing their best. I think at Children's we try to partner with schools as much as we can to try to help with curriculum development. What can we do to help bring other, individuals into the workforce? And it's slow, right? Like, we have the mental health issues continue to rise, and we still have the challenge with growing the workforce. So I think it's going to be around for a while. Unfortunately.
Okay. And so I have a two-part question. How can Impact 100 as an organization help to promote mental health in youth, especially for those families who face disparities and inequities in access to mental health care, which is something you had mentioned? And the second part of this question is, for families without insurance and resources, how can they access the care that they need?
Yeah, so I think Impact 100, me coming here to all of these, I love seeing a room full of people take the messages you heard today, and I think you're going to spread this information. I think and I'm here representing Children's Wisconsin, but I think this is about, hopefully you got a taste of what's happening in the community. And I think sharing forward this type of information is really important. I think the second part of that question, we have navigators at Children's Wisconsin who are able to assist if a family does not have insurance. We want to figure out how to get that kiddo insurance. Through the state insurance is available for many families. If families do not qualify at Children's Wisconsin, we will work with them to figure out how to get the care that they need. We are not going to turn families away due to their inability to pay. So again, I think, and that may not be every system, but at Children's Wisconsin, we're going to figure out how to remove those barriers or connect those families to the resources they need to get the services.
Thank you. Another question, why do you think Wisconsin's suicide rates are higher than other states?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to, access broadly, so we're not identifying kiddos as quickly as we need. I think we do have a state where, compared to some other states, there is a firearm culture where we have a hunting culture and there is access to firearms more than in other states, which we know is one of those risk factors for suicide if a kiddo is able to get access to a firearm. I think we also, there is a culture around alcohol, substance use in Wisconsin. Again, drivers for potentially, increased risk for suicidality.
I recently read an article about the lack of resources in Wisconsin for youth facing complex mental health issues, especially the shortage of residential treatment facilities. What types of things are being done to address this? What can Impact 100 do, again, to help this?
Yeah, so there was I know that question had come up I got that in advance. There was a bill that went through the Senate about bringing residential facilities. So these are facilities where a child may remain for an extended period of time, months, potentially years, because of the complexity or severity of their mental health concerns. We do not have those facilities in Wisconsin. Children's Wisconsin did support that bill. We believe in families staying together, and if that means that a residential facility here in the state is going to help families stay connected while that kiddo undergoes treatment, then we are absolutely all for that. I think advocating, speaking up for issues like that is extremely important.
Can you please explain and also destigmatize cutting behaviors, also known as self-harm?
Yeah, so that's a fine line, right? I think cutting behavior, so self-harm can present in a variety of different ways. And so we have kiddos who may utilize something to actually cut themselves. We have kiddos who may pick to the point that it becomes a self-harm issue. This does not necessarily equate to suicidality. A lot of people think, oh, my kiddo is cutting themselves. They're suicidal. It can be seen, it really becomes like a coping mechanism for that child, a unhealthy coping mechanism for that child. And so obviously, absolutely needs attention, needs treatment. I always think of, too, we run the risk of a child who is cutting, who has access to something to hurt themselves, that there's that one time they are going to cut too deep or do something unintentional that they didn't mean to do, and then it becomes a medical emergency. So there is it's an uncoupling of, doesn't necessarily mean they're suicidal, but it is something that we absolutely want to see a kiddo for and get them treatment to help them find healthier coping strategies.
Okay. And so we have another question. Can you please share how Children's Wisconsin participates and partners in the Milwaukee Healthcare Partnership Consortium, and what are some of the goals and objectives of this consortium?
Yeah, so my colleague Mandy Quinnell, who is also on our team, is the one who really participates directly with that consortium. And so we, attend, as Children's Wisconsin, attend those monthly meetings, have helped with that, the mental health emergency center redesign, like our colleague would bring back the floor plans for us to all look at and react to, and what's best for patient care. And so the goals around that are really on the community-based care, decentralized care, and trying to really make sure that this is a service that is supporting the needs of the community, which I think, too, we were chatting beforehand about, someone kind of said, how does Children's Wisconsin choose what you guys are going to do next, or how do you figure it out? Some of this is what is the community telling us? I think the walk-in clinic was really born out of that, a family saying, we need something more immediate. I need someplace to take my kid now. Where is that outside of an emergency room? And so we listen to the families, take up, the pulse in the community. And so I think Children's role is really continuing to partner with the other organizations involved with that partnership.
What would you recommend for parents of college kids or young adults who are no longer living at home? Maybe a plane ride away. How can we continue to check in and know that they're okay with all of the pressure that they're under while away at school or starting off in their careers?
Yeah, I think a lot of those, I think the slide I showed about having the conversation feels like maybe for those littles at home. I think a lot of those pieces ring true for college-age students too, or young adults who are no longer living in the home, right? Having those regular touch points, getting a sense of that baseline, he sounds off, that it doesn't sound like him on the phone. What's going on? Being purposeful to have those conversations in person as well as on the phone. If you have access to their social media, looking at what they're doing on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, and seeing gosh, this seems off for them. So it's, again, that trust and relationship is at the foundation of this. And then if something is off, then you react to that or dig deeper or say, gosh, the last time we talked, you just don't sound like yourself. What's going on? Or is school, and doing that deeper dive.
Okay, thank you. And we will end with one last question. We have a lot of questions.
Yes.
We don't have enough time for all.
Great questions.
I have one more follow-up question.
Yeah, thank you for all of your questions. And so I think you touched on this a little bit in your last response, but one of the questions we have here is, what do you do when your child won't talk to you?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a toughie. I think if that's not typical, that's not typical, right? At some point, your child is gonna talk to you, or they did talk to you at some point, I would assume. You gotta ask yourself, what's going on here? Is it something in our relationship? Do they talk to other adults? Do they talk to kids at school? Do I need to take a better look at what's happening at home in our family dynamic that may be contributing to the kid not talking? Looking kind of systemically at the whole picture of maybe we need to go to therapy as a family to figure out how to get through this, because something is potentially going on in that relationship or with that kiddo that you've gone through the talking points, you've done what you can, and now you maybe need a little bit of professional help to work through that. And I think some of this all goes back to stigma, right? If we make a big deal that, we got to go to therapy, there's something really wrong, we're going to get our kids, potentially anxious about that too, versus, you haven't really, I feel like our relationship is different, or I wish we could talk more. I think we should go see someone who can help us do that even better. So it's okay too to be like, I need some professional help here.
I have one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. Medication can be helpful too, but there are adverse reactions, especially among young people. How far have we come with genetic testing or advancements in being able to pinpoint the best medication for a child or adolescent?
I think we're making advancements. I don't think we're there yet. Unlike adults who take psychiatric medications where you could volunteer to go to a study and say, yep, I'm willing to study this medication and the effects on my body. We don't do that with children. So we have guidelines for children. We have around medication dosing based on weight. And this isn't to scare anyone. There is a level of trial and error around medication to see, does this medication work for my child? Do we need to play with the dosage? Is it a different child? So it's a very, and pediatricians are prescribing medications, psychiatrists prescribing medications. It's really working closely with that healthcare provider to figure out that right dosing for your kiddo. I think genetics, there's a lot going on in the genetic space around autism. I think in order to pinpoint this medication is going to work for this genetic profile, not there yet, but we're gonna keep working on that.
Thank you so much. I think we'll end the Q&A now, and we'll welcome Julie Gilpin back to the stage.
Certainly a lot to unpack after listening to that for all of us who have children, know children, love children, are around children, and for our community as a whole. So thank you so much, Dr. Walczak, for being here today. Your expertise, insights, and heartfelt words have illustrated the true complexities of behavioral health in children and adolescents, and hopefully have inspired us to act with purpose and urgency in our interactions with families, if we work with people with children who are suffering from mental healthness. And I think my takeaway is really the stigma around it. And if we can break that down, that'll go a long way, I think, toward positive actions for those suffering. It's truly evident that you're passionate about this, and we are so grateful for your wisdom. So thank you again for being with us today. I would also like to express appreciation for all of those who've worked so hard to put on today's luncheon. Impact 100 leaders, Maureen Kenfield, Kimberly Rennie Weisgerber, Sarah Manning, Gwen Armbers, Renee Mannion, Carla Cummings, and all the members of Impact's events and programming committees, and everyone who has worked behind the scenes. So thank you all for your hard work today. I also just want to mention Chris Fry and her staff here at the Wisconsin Club. They're very good to Impact 100, so we're grateful to be here at this beautiful venue. I want to encourage you all to check out, I bet you didn't know we have, an Impact 100 YouTube channel where we have video program, videos available in a couple of days or in a week or so. We'll have today's up, but we have some other past ones up as well of different programs we've had. So if you're looking for something to watch for your viewing pleasure, it is available. And we encourage you to do that or to share this with somebody who couldn't be here today. And just in closing, please mark your calendars for the annual award celebration, the high point of our year, which will take place on June 4th at the Italian Community Center. And that evening, we will be granting $411,000 to 5 very worthy nonprofits. So we're so excited to be granting that dollar amount on June 4th. And, because I'm sure you're all wondering, who are we giving this money to? We don't know. But our grants committees are currently working very hard, vetting, reviewing, and selecting those 5 finalists. And they will be announced in May. So stay tuned to social media and your inbox to hear that information. So as we leave this room today, let us carry the knowledge gained, the messages heard, and a shared commitment to action. Thank you so much for taking time today to be with us. We have this room until 1:30, so please stay, mix, mingle, network, and maybe meet a new friend while you're here. Think about what Impact 100 hat you might wear going forward. And again, thank you for being here, and I'll see you on June 4th at the annual award celebration. Thank you.